Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. 48 hours after the Miami Hurricanes go into the swamp, and I think not only send a message to the Miami Hurricane fans themselves, but I think send a message to the college football landscape. Want to open up the conversation of why this Miami Hurricanes team is not just an ACC contender. I would go as far as arguing they are the favorite to win this conference. Why can this Miami Hurricanes team go out and win a national championship in 2024? And I think it largely starts with the boxes that this Miami Hurricanes team checks. And when I look at the past national champions, what do those kind of teams look like? And I think it starts with line of scrimmage play, right? Georgia, Michigan, both two programs that dominated the line of scrimmage in their national championship years. You go back to, some of the Alabama teams, dominant line of scrimmage play. I look at this Miami Hurricanes depth chart, this roster, what we saw week one, and say, not only is that offensive line extremely good, but I think this defensive line kind of certified themselves as one of the better units that we see in the country. And so you look at the line of scrimmage play, I think it is certainly there for Miami to be the best team in the country. I think the second box you want to see checked is quarterback play. Do you have a quarterback that can go out and win you a national championship? Look, we knew the ceiling for Cam Ward was a Heisman caliber quarterback, a guy that can certainly win a national championship. I think the big question mark that we had was, can Cam Ward find the consistency heading into 2024? We certainly saw that week one against Florida. And I think finally, and I think the biggest question that I think we got somewhat answered that week one matchup against Florida was, they're a complete team. And you look at the conversations we had the last couple months around this Miami Hurricanes roster, the big question mark was, is this secondary good enough? You don't see teams win national championships when they have, glaring holes in their roster, because good teams will be able to exploit it. This Miami Hurricanes secondary was phenomenal, for lack of better terms, week one against Florida. And we had big time question marks about it. We talked about Graham Mertz. Can he attack a Miami Hurricanes secondary? Graham Mertz, a guy that, I think is one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC, goes 11 to 20 for only 91 yards and an interception. I think this Miami Hurricanes team also answered that they are a complete team. I would ask you guys, where is the weakness within this Miami Hurricanes roster? Because what we just saw on Saturday, that was about as complete of a performance we've seen really in all of college football week one, probably outside of Georgia. And so you start looking at the boxes that you want to see checked for this Miami Hurricanes program. I think they checked a lot of boxes, or showed that they can check a lot of boxes week one against Florida. Want to get into a little bit more of what we saw. I got a chance to watch this game a couple of different times, kind of looking for a couple of different things. Want to get into some of my big takeaways. Now, before we do, and as always, to the Miami Hurricane fans, one, would love to hear how you guys are feeling. We did a little instant reaction after the game. A lot of hype, a lot of excitement around this team. Now, 48 hours after, would love to hear how you guys are feeling. Again, if you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. All the support you guys have continued to show the boys. It's no secret I love talking this program. It's really appreciated. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Without further ado, let's get into it. And I want to start with the performance of the secondary. You look at this Florida Gators team, Graham Mertz, again, a quarterback that I had heading into 2024 is, one of the better quarterbacks in that SEC conference. You look at Eugene Wilson or Tremere Dike or Elijah Badger. I thought Florida had legitimate weapons on the outside as well. One of the biggest question marks we had heading into this game was, can Miami's secondary, kind of hold up? And they did even more of that. And you look at guys that we haven't seen play a ton of football. Jaden Harris, yes, he had a bad run fit, took a bad angle, and let Montrell Johnson go for the 71-yard touchdown run. Outside of that, I thought Jaden Harris, a guy that we haven't seen play a ton of football, played extremely well. You look at Michelle Powell, probably the most important player on this Miami Hurricanes defense, I would say. He is the captain of that Miami Hurricane secondary. And I think that's really important. I think our biggest question mark was, can this secondary come together and play as a unit? Having Michelle Powell back there is absolutely massive, not only in terms of the plays that he made, but the versatility he has. And you can ask him to play that single high safety and go be a ball hawk and get some turnovers. He did that on Saturday. I think more importantly, you can ask him to come into the box and operate in man coverage. He played a lot of nickel corner at Washington. He showed that ability as well. So I look at that Miami Hurricane secondary and say, you go back into the film and say, there were not a lot of throwing windows that were present. I thought Markeith Williams had a phenomenal play in the red zone, I believe, right before the half. So you look at this Hurricane secondary, I thought you saw them answer a lot of question marks in terms of the questions we had. I think secondly, and probably most importantly in terms of what I love most about this Miami Hurricanes defense, that pass rush, it's going to be lethal. And I think the important conversation to have is the best player on this Miami Hurricanes roster, arguably, missed most of that football game in Ruben Bain. Tyler Barron, Elijah Alston, stepping up to the plate, being forces coming off the edge. We kind of said it. The best way to hide maybe a secondary that you have question marks about is have an elite pass rush. Don't let the quarterback have clean pockets. Grant Mertz didn't have a single clean pocket pretty much all game. And when he did, I thought that Miami Hurricanes secondary really stepped up to the plate. And so when you start coupling an elite pass rush with what we think is a secondary that you can win a lot of football games with, I think they answered a lot of question marks in terms of the defensive side of the football. How about against the run? I think on the box score, you might say, all right, maybe they weren't great. If you didn't watch the football game, you would say, well, Miami wasn't great against the run, right? Montrell Johnson goes 11 carries for over 100 yards. That 71 of those yards came on one play. Outside of that one play, Florida really struggled to get the run game going. They were consistently in those third and long situations. One of the biggest stories, Florida was 1 of 9 on third downs. Yes, that is poor execution on third downs by Florida, but I think more importantly, they were living in those third and long situations, and you can't live like that against this Miami Hurricanes defense because the pass rush is too good. And I think you look at the interior defensive line, I think one of the other my big takeaways, I thought Ahmad Moten was excellent. We had some question marks about Miami on the inside holding up against the run. We know we have some elite pass rushers, right? A guy like Simeon Barrow Jr., one of the best pass rushers from the inside of the defensive line that you see in the country. Our question was, hey, is Miami, good enough at the point of attack on the inside of the defensive line to stop the run? We knew we had a guy in CJ Clark. I thought Ahmad Moten might have been the best player on that Miami Hurricanes defensive line Saturday afternoon, which is, I think, awesome to see because we heard a ton of rumbling about Ahmad Moten during fall camp. He certainly showed that, and it doesn't get reflected in the box score. But you go back and look at that game, beating double teams, letting his linebackers come downhill. He was a massive story in terms of Miami stopping the run. So you look at this defense and say, we look to be really dang good against the run. When we get you in third and long, our pass rush is going to be very good. And we got a secondary that we feel much better about sitting here Monday afternoon than we did Saturday morning. And so you look at the defense and say they checked a lot of boxes. Going to the offensive side of the football, you got to start with Cam Ward. What I loved most about Cam Ward, and I think the biggest question mark we had coming in was, hey, can Cam Ward be that playmaker, that difference maker at the quarterback spot, but walk that very fine line in terms of being that playmaker and being dynamic, but also keeping the ball out of harm's way? You saw him throw that one interception where he was probably trying to do a little too much. But outside of that, I mean, he was being that dynamic playmaker, getting outside the pocket, making some throws that tight windows, make your jaw drop, but not really putting the ball in harm's way after that interception. If you get that version of Cam Ward, that's one of the best quarterbacks in the country, if not the best. And so you look at the quarterback position, and what I didn't agree with the announcers in the booth were like, hey, we got to get Cam Ward playing within the offense. Yes, to an extent. You brought Cam Ward in to go be a Heisman caliber quarterback, a national championship level quarterback. You can't put a leash on Cam Ward. You have to live with a few of those mistakes, because for every one of those mistakes, you get that play when he's rolling out to his left, off his back foot, throwing an absolute dot to Jacoby George in the back of the end zone. There's just not many quarterbacks that can do that kind of thing. And so I look at the performance of Cam Ward and say, if you get that performance of Cam Ward, this is a team that is extremely dangerous, not only in the ACC, but as a national championship contender. And I thought you saw Cam Ward walk that very fine line. If he continues to do that, this Miami Hurricanes offense is going to be just fine. You look at the wide receiver play, we kind of said it heading in. That connection between Xavier Restrepo and Cam Ward, it's going to be elite. We saw it elite Saturday afternoon, 7 catches for $112 and a touchdown. The chemistry that's been developed between Cam Ward and Xavier Restrepo within the last 8 months was certainly on the football field. And I think what excites you the most is it's only going to get better as they continue to get reps together in game. Having that quarterback wide receiver battery is massive. We've seen Alabama win national championships on the back of elite wide receivers and elite quarterbacks. Yes, they had very good line of scrimmage play, but they had some wide receiver quarterback connections that, were just really hard to stop. I think Miami has one with Xavier Restrepo and Cam Ward, but outside of that, they have, these other pieces that they can sprinkle in. One of the other bigger takeaways was the tight end production that we saw. This was something that we were looking for heading into 2024. We certainly saw it Saturday afternoon. You have a guy like Isaiah Horton that when you want to walk your safety into the box and try to take away a guy like Xavier Restrepo underneath, Isaiah Horton's the guy that can make you pay when you leave cornerbacks on islands on the boundary. We saw Cam Ward throw beautiful deep balls. He was 5 of 7, 20 plus yards down the field. Cam Ward, I guess what I'm trying to say is, how do you get after this Miami Hurricanes offense? Because there are so many different ways that they can attack you. And I think one of the storylines is, all right, this Miami Hurricanes run game, you look at Damian Martinez and say, all right, 16 for 65. That's not going to wow you on the box score. If you watch that game in the circumstances that Damian Martinez had in terms of when to find those hard yards, he found the hard yards every time. This is a Miami Hurricanes offense that I don't know how explosive the rushing attack is going to be, because you kind of have some bruisers in Damian Martinez and Mark Fletcher. It's going to be an extremely efficient rushing attack, kind of like you had with Michigan in the 2023 season, where, yeah, Donovan Edwards created some explosive plays, but on average, it was just Blake Corum picking up 6 yards, picking up 5 yards, staying on schedule, kind of just choking teams out like a boa constrictor. Miami showed that in the rushing attack. And again, I don't think it gets truly reflected on the box score how efficient that run game was, but I thought it certainly was efficient. I think you look at that offense and say, not a lot of holes in it. I think the left guard play is probably going to continue to be a battle. I thought Ryan Rodriguez was, quite frankly, the best one there. They worked in Matthew McCoy. Ryan Rodriguez is not necessarily the most physically imposing, but he's a really good athlete and he knows what he's doing out there. That's kind of what matters. So you got 4 guys around Matthew Rodriguez that I think are going to be playing on Sundays. Matthew Rodriguez physically probably not going to be a Sunday guy, but if you have a guard that just knows what he's doing, knows how to pick up stunts, that matters. Not a lot of teams have 5 offensive linemen that know how to do that. I watched a lot of week 1 football. I saw a lot of offensive lines that just could not pick up stunts in pass pro. This Miami Hurricanes defense can. So I look at the offensive line and say that's going to be just fine. This is a complete team that can dominate the line of scrimmage with great quarterback play. That's the recipe to win a national championship. And I think the most fun conversation to have is that I think this team only gets better. But one of our bigger concerns heading into this matchup was it's week 1 on the road, hostile environment with a team that has a lot of new faces. Is it going to all come together week 1? We had question marks about that. It certainly looked like it did, but I think it only gets better in terms of the chemistry building within this program. I don't think I could have been more impressed with this Miami Hurricanes performance week 1. And now the conversation goes from, can Miami win the ACC and be dangerous in the college football playoffs, to, can this Miami team go win a national championship? Because I look at this roster, I look at how that team played Saturday afternoon and say, that's a national championship team. We'll see if they can find that consistency the rest of the 2024 season. I think they got a lot of games to kind of iron some things out and get better as a football team, because I don't think there's a ton of teams on that schedule that are really going to challenge them. We'll see if they can make it happen. I think this team has the talent to make it happen. Can it come together and execute it? That's the question. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all